Okay, welcome to another installment of IT Fondi, and today we'll be discussing a very interesting topic. What's the difference between an OpenMRS implementer and an OpenMRS developer? What's the difference? Is there a difference in the first place? Stay tuned as we move on to see this in detail. Yes, welcoming you again to IT Fondi, your tech channel with tech reviews, self-help videos, and everything to do with tech as you traverse your tech journey. Fancy words there. Let's dive right in. OpenMRS implementation and development sometimes seem similar because implementers do perform some kind of configurations, and developers actually write the code. I was about to say real code there. Don't want to get backlash. Who write the code? So what do implementers do and who are implementers? Let me just skip here to one implementation or one scenario that we can look at in the wiki where you have one of our a writer there, an implementer track, and they say, who is this program for? It's for business analysts, information technology professionals, support, implementations that are actively involved in deployment activities. And of course, what is involved here? Implementation has different things. We'll start with implementation. It has different objectives. You really want to implement, what to configure, what versions are you supposed to be using, do you need an upgrade to have certain features or not, what snapshots are you at, are you using a beta version, an alpha version, whatever the difference might be. There are a number of things there to consider. I want you to see here some sessions that were performed where there was the look of Ori. This is also one of the implementations there. I'll link I'll give this link in the description. Here you have the toolkits and what to consider when you're doing an implementation. What containers, Docker containers are you using? If you don't know about Docker, very wonderful technology. And if you just feel extra pumped, you can continue and also read about Kubernetes. Deploying OpenMRS front end, how to set it up with an existing database. So this is, when you talk about implementation, you're talking about setting up an instance, having it configured to the needs of your users, like configured forms. For example, you'll find very many demo forms, but how do you disable this from your application? Those demo forms that come from the community, how do you disable these? How do you add fields that capture particular data? How do you configure the metadata? What packages will you need, and so on. Shifting back to the implementer documentation, so you'll see a number of things there. That was like a scenario to consider, the different things that might be as you're doing implementation work. Now here it's what the process involves business analysis. What does the user actually want? There is a very big difference between what you have done and how that serves the purpose of the user or the end user, the client, whatever you'd like to call them. Just consider in your mind that these are real world scenarios with real world impacts, and you definitely want to get everything right. So there is an iterative process where you have calls to the clients, where there are different forms of receiving feedback and so on. Customizations, this is based on the user or what you also can recommend to the user. The server installation, configuration, training and data analysis, decision making that is also involved as a result of doing data analysis. All this is in implementation. So being an OpenMRS implementer as an individual means you can participate in any of these things. It means that you have the ability, you have the right skill set, the tools to perform the business analysis. What does someone want? Say they want a form, and how many fields? What does it capture? What types of data? What constraints are on that data? What validation can be added to that? All those nitty-gritties are in the business analysis and also in the system customization. Remember, OpenMRS out of the box can be configured to different use cases and tailored for different users. How do you install it and make the environment production ready and stable? There is the bit of knowledge transfer. How do you transfer what you know to the client, and how do you continually support them? Is there a bit of decision making and reporting and all this? How does this help? How does it make business sense and business intelligence? Choosing OpenMRS, you will look at different, I'll give a link in the description about distributions. So there are some that come out of the box with different features. How do you configure that? How do you have a minimal set of features that are needed by the user? Or how do you develop new features that are needed? Of course, that's for the developer side. Requirements, this is looking at the project design, the infrastructure that is required. All this is part of the implementation side. So as an implementer, you have to think of all this. You may not necessarily collaborate with governments and NGOs, but these are projects that are needed by them. So you need to understand what is the funding mechanism. This is just to have a full idea of how OpenMRS is used in a real world scenario. Looking at points of care, I want you to think about the type of infrastructure, the power, the connectivity, the internet. There is one interesting scenario in Korea that you will find where people say, my machine is really slow, or the server is really slow. I want you to look at something called the OSI model, where you have a top-down approach of how data is transferred, or how you can actually do troubleshooting as well. It's very useful in the troubleshooting aspect of it. Is it the physical, where you have the networks and Wi-Fi, Ethernet, and all these ISPs, that whole idea? Is it the machine, the hardware still, is it not well optimized, the operating system? Are you using an SSD versus an HDD? And all these different ideas. Are you using Windows? Are you using Linux? Is the system well patched? Is it fast enough? Like, those are some of the considerations as you're deploying to give the best user experience. You're looking at servers. Should it be an instance locally set up? Is it a server on site, or is it something in the cloud? When you put it in cloud, what are the security considerations you've put? Of course, this is patient data, very sensitive. You've put it in the cloud. Have you considered which cloud, which features, which regulations? All these things must be in your mind as an implementer. Of course, it will take you a long way. You'll read through this and see the different ideas that are presented to you. They say from beginning, like, how do you look at the bit of implementation, looking at the whole process from the start? When you set up the system, what user roles are there? These are some of the things. What I love about this documentation is that it's robust and it gives you a very big view of what is necessary. When you're talking about patients, what identifiers are there? You know, every country has a different identifier. You have national IDs, you have NSSF, whatever cards, and all these things, like these social security cards. There are so many ways of identifying patients. What is unique, what is reusable, what is relevant for the setting you're looking at. You're looking at what information to collect. Some things are relevant, some things are irrelevant. When you're collecting data, you need to collect as per security standards. You need to collect what is just enough. Don't collect excess. Of course, you're not data brokers that you're going to sell it to someone. You could, but of course that would not be ethical. I want you to consider all these things as you're thinking about implementation. What type of forms are you going to use? Can these forms be done used by the clients? In one of my videos previously, I talked about there was a bit of a form builder. That form builder helps you to be able to make forms manually on your own. Of course, the OpenMRS has a very beautiful set of videos on their academy talking about this. I'll link that in the description. You'll notice in my videos I talk so much about linking in the description. There is always an idea of people wanting to get quick and dirty. You just want to watch a video and just jump out of it. Reading the documentation, not to like sink yourself into it, but it's really good to look at it. You'll find some really insightful pieces of information in there. When we look at support, because once you deploy, there must be support, data replication, backups. This is the whole operational side of things, reporting. When they talk about an implementer, I want you to think of someone who does more than just configuration and talking. You can do as many things as possible in this setting of OpenMRS. So we'll segue real quick to developers, right? See you in a bit. Yes, OpenMRS developers. And this is a checklist. Of course, this is quite old documentation, but I can't say old is gold in tech, but there are some insights you can draw from this. Like, what do you need as a developer, and what are some of the things you consider? Here is a checklist of things you can look at Some of these things are a bit outdated, but they still have some insights in them. And one of the things as a developer is basically this, beginning to suggest improvements. That this means there are code changes. An implementer uses the system as is and configures it to the needs, and also just does all the groundwork that is surrounding giving the user a final product. The developer creates features that enable the system to be extended and to have more functionality, and basically it also fix potential maybe issues that or potential shortcomings that may be in the system. You can look at this as we move. So contributing as a developer, here there are some prerequisites, but what you're looking at is using Git, where being a developer, there's a whole big aspect of collaboration. There's a whole aspect of following code conventions. There's a bit of testing your data of your PRs and code changes. There's aspect of working in teams, agile sprints, like you're working with different people to achieve different features. We'll look at squads in a bit in the future. But here you're looking at code reviews. You're writing code as a developer. A developer can also be an implementer, but usually at times some have put their foot on the ground and the twain cannot meet that. Developers usually do not want to interact with the clients, and implementers may thrive in that area. Yet when it comes to the technicality, you find, yes, an implementer may be able to configure and do some code changes, but may not have the full tool set as a developer does. A front-end developer will have a Swiss Army knife of things that they can use, while you find the implementer can do some of them, but not all. Of course, there must be a bit of specialization. So when you're starting out, it's good to be a bit of a generalist, and then somewhere along the line, not too long, somewhere along the line you find that middle ground where you can settle in and be at rest. I hope that tries to clear a bit of the idea of a developer versus an implementer. If it's still confusing, let's just discuss in the comments, and I'll see you in the comment section. Thank you so much. I encourage you to subscribe, comment, like, and your comments are very valuable to me. Don't forget to subscribe. The comments are very valuable because it helps me make improvements. I'll see you in a bit. Ciao.